Hey, welcome to the 167, and today we're talking about move. It's time to take a step of faith. It's time to move. Welcome to the 167. Hey, welcome to the 167. I am freezing.
Nice to meet you, Freezing.
Here with
Hi, freezing.
with Pastor Rick Fun in the Sun George.
Guns in the sun.
Yeah.
Guns in the Suns.
Yeah, you know, sun's out, guns out.
Oh, we look to the guns.
Good morning.
And I'm here with Jake, always wearing shorts in the winter, Reeves.
That is Pastor Nick.
That's true. That's absolutely true. If you guys have never seen Pastor Nick Magana in the wintertime, he's still like in short sleeves, like a junior high boy.
He will hold on to the last very moment. So,
And you know that that's happening today because it's 40 degrees out. So you know there's like just hordes of junior high boys right now at school in basketball shorts.
100%.
So today, speaking of basketball shorts, we're talking about move.
Yes, we are. An exciting time.
It is an exciting time in our church. Everybody's, like I think that people sometimes get tense around vision series when we talk about, how we're spending money, what we're doing, stuff like that, and pushing people towards that. But I actually, I think these are great series because we're actually telling people this is what, the results of your giving. So we were talking a little bit about that on Sunday about how far we have come, not just with Move and Move Step of Faith, but also with Game Changer Full Court Press and Game Changer. Like, how long has this actually been going on?
A while, yeah. No, I get excited as well. There's always a little pushback, and people are like, "Oh, you're talking about money again." But the pushback is only from the people who aren't giving money. If you notice that, it's like the people who aren't giving or who aren't giving very much are the ones that.
Or how about not giving with a joyous heart?
Yeah.
So,
It's kind of that's interesting. Move. So this particular generosity initiative began a year ago. If you go back prior to that, we did Game Changer. So we've been in a little bit of a journey trying to fulfill the vision that we believe God has laid before us. And anytime you embark on something great, there is a great price to pay for that greatness. I mean, nothing comes easy. So people who accomplish great things have invested greatly into that thing, whether it be, professional athletes and they're achieving at a great level. They've invested a lot into that greatness. It didn't just happen. It started with their parents investing a lot of money in them, investing time and resources, and their passion just plays out into now I'm at the top of my game. So translate that into where we are as a church. We're not just the run-of-the-mill, average, get-by church. I'm not being judgmental of any other church. I'm just talking about who we are, and we're a church we feel like God's called us to something more, something bigger, something greater, a bigger impact in the community. And that comes at a price. And that's why I started yesterday Sunday, I started this series saying, don't make a commitment. Don't say you're going to do something. Don't claim to be a follower of Christ. Don't do it until you stop and understand the cost, because there is a significant cost.
Yeah. I think it's the irony, and I think maybe the temptation for us to like the status quo and to like the comfortable, because I always thought that growing up. I grew up in, some semi-small churches, and it was always that the church is getting too big. And I'm like, well, what's it supposed to do? Like, if we're out there winning the lost, if we're out there sharing Jesus, how does the number stay the same? Like I don't understand the replacement ratio here.
And I had somebody come to me after one of the services, and they said that they were a part of in a little smaller community for a number of years, and they were in leadership, and they had people come to them saying, we just want to be part of a really healthy small church. And they said, I don't know that there is
You want a
such
life
a
group.
thing as a really healthy small church that's not doing it. Healthy churches tend to grow. You don't have to become 1,000 or 10,000 or 5,000, but there should be growth.
I mean, if you live out in the like far boonies of Canada and there's 12 people and all 12 people go to church,
That's a big church.
I will say that
That's 100%.
you
Yeah.
have successfully initiated a small church that's healthy. But
We have all 12 people and 2 bears.
and then their analogy, they started to unpack that, and they said, as I was talking to this person, and I said, well, wherever the light is, it draws bugs, right? So light attracts bugs, and then they said it. My analogy kind of broke down because I said, and we want to attract
People.
bugs, but we don't want cockroaches because light doesn't
People are
draw
moths.
cockroaches. And they said my analogy kind of broke down a little
Like,
bit.
wah,
It's
wah, wah.
yeah, I'm like, well, yeah, you probably should have just stopped with, growing things or healthy things grow, which is what I believe.
That's
And
what we tell
so,
people,
yeah.
though. They're like, why do you guys use so many lights? I'm like, I don't know. People are attracted to lights.
Yeah.
yeah,
So,
yes,
but
Like, what
anyway,
is this? Jesus?
it's an exciting time because there's some exciting things happening.
Yeah.
And I love being a part of life change and growth and seeing salvation and seeing people who were once living in darkness and the light goes off and they're, that's an exciting journey to be on.
Well, that was one of the things that initially attracted Carissa and I to this church as well is, it was even things as simple as Bike Week. It was a focus on, we want people who, like, I tell people this all the time because we have a security team and they're like, a church shouldn't have to have a security team. Like, no, we want messy people to be able to come into a safe environment and to call people out of their sins. And so we have security to make sure that that doesn't escalate. But it's like to see people that have real life change, where it's like you're going not from like a 6 to a 7, but from, a 0 to a, an
Hero.
8. Yeah.
sorry.
Dang it.
Yeah. So I want to, honestly, I want to be the church that doesn't just say verbally, we really care about our community. We love the lost. We're passionate about Jesus. And we say it, but we don't do anything to demonstrate it.
Yeah.
I want to be the church that does it more than we say it. Like it's reflected in what we do, not just what we say.
Yeah.
And so, we're going to do some things. And when you do things, things cost money. It's just the way it is. But it's more than just money. It's an investment of time. It's going to cost you something personally. It's going to cost you perhaps relationally. There's a cost, and you need to know that cost.
We were just talking about it at staff meeting that I do think that we are very good with our finances here because every year we're coming under budget. Like we budget something that we think is pretty reasonable and we still end up coming under budget because we're good with our finances. But a couple of the things that we are sharing that were wins that are directly money related is, what was it? $50-some thousand.
Yeah,
51, I think.
about $51,000 that we have given in assistance to people who don't necessarily, few of them come to our church. Most of them do not. They just live in our community and they know that we're generous. And so they come here and they say, we're behind on our utility bill, or we need food, or the baby needs food and diapers and whatever. And we give them gift cards or write a check to their landlord or give them money to go to the grocery store, whatever it might be. But $51,000, and we're 10 months in, so we got another couple of months to wrap up the year.
And we actually have a ministry built around that with our deacons, that the deacons, it's not like people walk in and we're like, here's a bunch of money. They sit down with these people and say, let's talk about how to get you out of this hole.
Yeah, they vet them. I mean, they have to fill out a form, and then the deacons meet with them and say, how'd you get into this place? And, sometimes they just say, listen, we're not going to give you $8,000 to pay all the back things that you,
Your Amazon bill.
just so you can then get evicted and not sometimes you got to cut your losses.
Yeah.
And you're in such a mess, but they walk them through that and say, here's what you have to do to get out of that mess. So we give a little bit of financial planning or education in the process.
So it's not just $51,000 just out, it's $51,000 and we're doing ministry to these people and
Yes.
affecting their lives.
Yep.
And then what was we obviously I was telling somebody else this, that we actually tithe as a church,
Yep.
and so we were giving up till now we've given
Yeah, so
154,000
something thousand, but part of our tithe is that the benevolence with the
benevolence.
deacons, so that's lumped in there as well. But yeah, just in what we gave to local and foreign missionaries, so missions organizations, was then another 100 whatever thousand, 150,000 that we give monthly in support to missionaries in Thailand or in Mexico, or we partner with people both in the States. At the University of Kansas, we have a missionary that reaches out to foreign students at the university, and so a lot of money given to reach the lost outside of the walls of New Life and outside of the community of Gardner.
And not to mention the 62 baptisms, the countless people that have come in and experienced life change, got a breakthrough, like all that ministry. I mean, like basically people's money keeps the lights on here so we can do that.
Yeah, so it is all an investment in the kingdom, or in building the kingdom and in changing lives. And I wish I could say that every person that we wrote a check to or gave a gift card to, of that $51,000, it changed their life. Now they're Christ followers now. But that's not the case. Sometimes it's just, you met my need and now I'm going to go on, but we planted a seed. Sometimes we get to reap the harvest. Sometimes we're just planting the seed. Sometimes we're watering the seed. And there are people who are part of our church because at one point we helped them financially.
And there are some people we helped financially because they're a part of our church.
Yeah. So it's all just, I'm being faithful and obedient to do what God's laid on my heart. That's all that is me saying, I want to be generous. So I'm going to bring my offering, my tithe, to the church and trust that that money that I bring is going to be multiplied, that God's going to bless it and multiply it. Then it's going to be used to further ministry, that then I get to say, I was a part of that. Like, I got to see all of this happen.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk a little bit and bridge that. But just for our listeners, if you haven't caught up yet, if you're not in a life group and you haven't been coming to Move groups on Monday nights, you actually can download the Right Now Media app on your phone.
When can you do that?
Right now.
Right now.
Right now, you can go to either the Droid or the Apple Market, the Apple Store, and download Right Now Media on your phone. And if you go to our website and get a login, you can do that by going to www.newlifegardener.com/right now.
Right now.
Right now. You can get a login and you can find us there and follow along with the Move curriculum. And so this week, there's usually a teaching and then a video of somebody who actually was generous. And this week, it was a video about two small girls, 5 and 7 years old, that went around and collected cans and bottles and, kind of cashed in the money, and they raised $65 and sent it into World Vision for their water initiative.
$67.
$67.
Just kidding.
$67.52 to the World Vision Water Initiative. And then the little girl asked her dad, "Do you think I saved someone's life?" And of course, the cynical person that I am, I was like, I don't know, did she?
We had a whole discussion about it at our group. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. And so I Googled the water initiative at World Vision,
Yeah.
and for $50, you can buy a water filter for a family.
Okay, cool.
And so I was like,
Yeah.
yes, they did. They
Yep.
met the threshold that they probably
Nice.
saved a family.
Yeah.
And so I'm going, even that, where we're sending $150,000 in foreign missions, like how many people's lives did you literally save in that?
Yeah.
Not to mention the spiritual implications of that. But, so I was asking, because the whole theme of that is that it was something very small that they did, little kids collecting cans. And yet for a family in Africa, that could literally mean the difference between life and death.
Yeah. So at our table, kind of the same thing. So did the $67, make a difference? And I took it and kind of brought it into our world here, because I hear it all the time. Well, no, what difference is my $200 going to make? Or if I make a commitment and say, I'll give $50 a month or a week or whatever, is that really going to make a difference? And my answer is yes. It's not the dollar amount. It's the collective I'm in. I'm committed. And God does something supernatural with what is given to him in faith. So the example being, in the temple, and all the high rollers are saying, "Hey, I'm writing this check," or, "Look at the cash I'm dropping in." And then the lady goes up and she had
The two
two,
mites.
yeah, 2 coins. And she's like, I don't have as much as you have, but I'm going to give what I have. And Jesus said, that's more. Well, it wasn't more financially, it was more sacrificially. And God steps in to the sacrifice, to the obedience, and he multiplies what we give. So they may have only given $67 of actual cash, but then when God steps in and blesses it and multiplies it, the end result is $67,000 or whatever God chooses to do with that. And so that's the cool part.
Yeah.
Yeah. And before we move forward, I want to shout out something kind of crazy cool when you think about it is, so we started, Game Changer had the pleasure of running through COVID.
Yeah.
And that was not super fun. But the awesome thing is, we stayed under budget, like Pastor Lucas said.
Mm-hmm.
We did not take a PPP loan, which I'm not
correct.
disparaging churches that
Nope.
needed to keep staff or whatever else. We didn't have to do, pay cuts or anything like that. And we continued generosity during that time frame and have kept moving forward on it. And so that's oftentimes at this point that I know as pastors, we try to put that period way back in the past.
Yeah.
But a cool thing that was built from a lot of really small, people committing to
Oh
it.
yeah. I mean, how many churches went under during COVID, and our generosity, like our people, our listeners, like they were generous during that time, and like not only kept the church going, kept the church afloat, was helping us meet Game Changer, but was also active in our community, helping people get groceries, helping people that were homebound.
Yeah. And that wasn't because one person bankrolled everything.
Nope.
We don't have that.
We don't
at New
have,
Life.
we don't have that guy.
We have a lot of people that say, here's what I have. God blesses it, multiplies it, and people's lives are changed.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is so powerful when you talk about the multiplication that God does. But I also think it's really interesting that God always works in percentages, where it's like he asks you to tithe, and it's like, well, whatever that is for 10% is different for everybody else. But it's like that the widow's mite was 100%.
Yeah.
And even the story with these little girls, they didn't raise $65 and go, well, this is my cut, and these are the expenses we did going to, like, it was like, we raised this money, we gave this money. It was 100%.
Yep.
And then God's going to bless that. So I wrote down here though, too, what's an example? So like, kind of looking at that, what's an example that you took a small step of faith and it became a much, much bigger story?
I have
Countless.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there are all kinds of stories. I could go back to the decision to go to a breakfast that somebody wanted to talk to me about a church in Gardner. And I said, no, I'm not.
What
I
happened
heard,
with that?
Yeah, I heard a little bit about, hey, I know the church is kind of a mess. There's only 20 people. And I said, no, I am not interested. Would you at least have breakfast? Let me talk to you. Okay. Well, that decision then changed everything. The decision that we made to put our house on the market in Lenexa, to say, we're not going to live in Lenexa and try to pastor in Gardner. We're selling the house. That decision was huge because the first people who looked at our house, bought our house, they wound up becoming an instrumental part of New Life Community Church 10 years later, through a series of things. But there was a connection through those people, and the decision to move, the decision to build this church, small step. It was huge at the time, but that step has changed hundreds, probably thousands of lives. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I have countless examples of how just deciding to do this little thing that didn't, I know it feels big, but in the grand scheme of things, is it really going to make a difference? And the answer is yes, it's been huge. Every one of those things.
Yeah, I think back, one I haven't really, I don't know if I've shared as much. I know I've told before, but like back when I was in a band and I don't know that we would have necessarily said that we were like we were all Christians, but we weren't like always playing, worship music or whatever. And we were definitely 19-year-old boys in our humor and everything else. It was not anything I can repeat, on here. But we still, we were all raised in the church and we still believed that Jesus was Lord. And so, but I remember we took on a drummer who was not a believer because he was a good drummer. And we're like, this could be a really terrible idea. But one of the few things that we ever did in practice, besides like my songwriting, which reflected what was going on in my faith and everything, is we always prayed to start practice just because it was a rhythm we were all in. But then Lord only knows what was said after that. Well, anyway, we thought literally nothing of it. And shortly after he moved away to go to college, but we were still kind of trying to play local shows and everything occasionally. He ended up getting baptized. And I went up for his baptism, and he told his testimony, and I just wept because he was talking about basically just being in community with us and seeing us living out our faith in these really small ways blew up. And now the dude is a worship pastor, just
it's incredible,
up by Lansing and everything, and he's pastoring a church of 500 people. And I'm like, that dude, he honestly, I still feel bad saying this. He probably loves Jesus more than me, and I'm like, I love Jesus. But
you saying that reminds me of before I was in full-time ministry and I worked in a warehouse. I worked side by side with this guy who was not a believer, and just the decision that I made to step into his world, to hear about his journey, and his struggles, and in this, he's a good guy, grew up on a farm in Kansas, good, morals. He was but he wasn't a follower of Christ. And he was heartbroken because his mom was dying of cancer. And the simple step of faith that I took was to step into his world and say, I'll be praying for your mom. And then I followed that up a day or two later with another step to say, if you want, I would be willing on the weekend to go home with you.
Wow.
And just pray for your family. If you would want that, I'm available. And it changed his life.
Wow.
And I was able then, subsequent to that, lead him to Christ, prayed a prayer with him on my front steps. After work one day, we came back to my house and prayed with him, and he's now a follower of Christ.
That's awesome.
And how doable is that? I mean, just to say, hey, I'll go with you to pray for your sick relative. I mean,
and it was going to cost me something, right? So I knew I'm going to have to give up a weekend. We're going to drive 5 hours, and his mom it's weird. His mom doesn't know me. He's not even a Christian. I don't know if they think who's coming, some faith healer or something. I was like, no, I'm as your friend. I want to be a part of that. And so it changed everything.
Yeah. I was reflecting on this. There's so many different times, but just even something as simple as, I think I may have told the story before, but so when Carissa and I met, a bunch of my friends had said oh, you should date Carissa. We were just friends. And I was actually dating a different girl at the time, and it was long distance, and I was so frustrated with it. And my roommate passed me and was like, this is so stupid. I don't know why you just don't date Carissa, and walked away. And I was like, huh, and picked up the phone and called her and asked her out on a date. And it was just that one comment from my roommate at the right time that I was completely altered my, it's my wife, kid, 4 kids. And I'm going, what would that have been if, my roommate had not just looked at me and said, you're being ridiculous. Call this girl who's a good Christian. She's, in ministry. She's, and I'm just those are these small things that lead you on an entirely different path.
This is so dumb. Give me $100. Right?
Yeah. The whole, the whole alternate universe, idea of, what would life be like had I not made that decision?
Yeah.
I've played that in my mind before. What would my life be like right now if I had not chosen to go to church when I was 17 with a friend of mine who got in trouble? And I said, yeah, I'll go. Like, I don't want to go, but I'll do it for you.
Yeah.
Right.
But that decision changed my life. What would my life be like if I would have said, I'm not having breakfast with you. I'm not interested in moving to Gardner. And if I would have said no to that, what would have happened?
Right.
It's a crazy experience to kind of think through the possibilities.
Yeah.
Well, and they've made a million movies about that, but I always think about the movie when I was growing up, 80s, 90s, Mr. Destiny. It was Jim Belushi, or what's the younger brother? The one that did not die. John. No, John's
John
dead.
died.
Yeah.
Jim.
So it's Jim Belushi, and he was a kid that he went up and he was, bases loaded when he was in high school, and he misses, like he strikes out, and it was like, an angel comes and he's like, well, what would it have been like if I would have hit that home run? And so of course then he ends up dating the popular person, and his whole life's a mess, and it doesn't.
Yeah. So anyway,
Go watch it.
I want to live a life that I don't have to second guess. I wish I would have, and if I would have just done this, and to live a life of obedience, to say, I want to step into everything that God has planned for me and see what God will do through me. So I'm going to step into it.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the last part of it. So we got 4 minutes left. What is something I can do right now? I'm a listener. What is something I can do right now to prepare my heart and my mind to hear what that step is from God?
What we did at the end of service on Sunday is I just ask everybody to simply posture themselves with their hands lifted. So if you're listening or watching right now, the thing you can do is just to sit when we're done, lift your hands, open your hands, palms up, and just say, God, I want to receive whatever you have. We sang a song that says, wherever you lead me, right, I'll go.
Please be parked if you're driving.
Like, whatever the cost.
Jesus, take the wheel.
Yeah, whatever the cost, I'll pay it, right? And just to say, I'm willing. That's where it begins. I'm willing. We're oftentimes not willing. Like, I don't want to pay the price. I don't want to go there. I don't want to give this up. But you start with saying, Jesus, take the wheel.
Have an attitude of yes.
Yes.
What do you think, Pastor Jake?
I think, like, for the people that are just like utterly terrified, I'll meet them where they're at. Open your hands for the first step. Don't be worried about he might be calling you something crazy big, and as we can all testify, you should go there. But like, there will always be that first step, the small step, the what's going to feel like a big step to you. Be open to that.
The first step.
Yeah, be open to the first step.
Like, if you get that video, that little girl might grow up to be a missionary in Africa digging those wells, but right now she's collecting cans.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. I would say, kind of in that vein, listen. I mean, take the time to listen. Like, you're like, God's not speaking to me. I'm like, well, like, how much time do you listen? Like 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Like, take time to sit down and listen, and just be still before the Lord and let him speak to you.
Yep.
All right. Thanks, guys, for being with us. We look forward to hearing your guys' stories. If you guys have a great move story, some way that God's been working in your life, email me, lucas@newlifegardener.com. I'd love to talk with you, bring you on 7-Minute Stories. And for the rest of us, stay tuned for a 7-Minute Story, and we'll see you next time. Hey, welcome back to 7-Minute Stories. I am here with Kimberly Price.
Hello.
Would you prefer the full Kimberly or just Kim?
Oh, whatever.
Kimmy, Kim. All right.
Kimmy.
Kim. All right. So today we're going to be talking about your 7-minute story and just focusing on what God's been doing lately and how far he's brought you in just a very short time, I feel like. All right. So why don't we start at the beginning? Tell me what it was like growing up. Did you guys grow up in the church? What was your experience with that?
Well, there was a church. So I'm from North Carolina. Okay. I'm from North Carolina. And my aunt's husband at the time, because he passed away, he was the preacher.
Mm-hmm.
And we went to this church. I forgot what it's called now. But I never really understood, like, because they had, like, children's church, kind of. Like, they had it from, different ages, and I never really understood like why they separated it, like why the adults had their own and why the kids had their own, you know? Like I never understood why they never wanted us all to be together and understand the same thing. And I never liked that, so I never really paid attention. And like I loved going to church with my grandma because I love my grandma, but I didn't like the way they did things, you know?
Did they
Like,
use the flannel graph, where like they put the person on like the cloth thing and it stuck up there, or do they actually use like video to teach you?
No, they just, so basically all they did was like preach the whole time.
Oh,
They did like two
sit
or
still, listen to me preach.
no,
Is
that's all it was. And then they would send us to children's church to where like all we did was just do worksheets. And like I sit at school for hours on end. I don't want to come to church and do worksheets. I want to learn about God, and that's not going to get me to learn about God. And I didn't like that. And then after that, we just didn't go to church. We just didn't really go to church, and things got bad. My home was really toxic, like bad, and it affected me a lot. And then we had moved in with my grandparents, and
Is that when you moved here to Gardner?
no, it was way before. I moved out of my home, me, my mom, and my brother did, when I was about 8 or 9. And we moved there for about 6 months. And then, like, that was toxic. And then I started, like, self-harming. And that's what I used to cope, but it didn't really cope. And I noticed that, like, I look at it now, like, it's pointless. All it does is leave scars on yourself, and it just reminds you. It's just like a reminder. Like, it's pointless. It's not really something that copes with it. It's just something that's to remind you what you went through. And I lived there, and I was never home there. I had this friend named Kendall. She was a bad influence, though, but at the time, it felt right. You know, like, to be her friend, it felt really right. But it wasn't. But it's because, like, she was, like, my escape. Like, I stayed at her house all the time. I never went home. Like, it got to the point where my uncle would say I did stuff, and I wasn't even there. And I was like, no. Like, I didn't do that. And then we moved back in with my grandfather, and then things were still, like, not right. And so we moved back out, and we moved in with my grandparents again. And then I went back to that school, and then, like, the school was just not it. Like, it's just, the people there are not the people that you want to hang out with. They're the people that will bring you down no matter how you feel in life. Like, if you're the happiest person in the world, they will ruin that. And so those people didn't really help much with my depression. And so we went to Puerto Rico. And that's where my grandfather lived. And then we stayed there for like 9 months or so. I broke my face. It's just like things just boom, boom, boom. Like there was no break.
Right.
And then we went to Florida for like 5 days or so. And then we went back to North Carolina to my grandparents. And my dad came here. Well, he went to Texas and then he came here.
That
And
is a lot of moving.
I know.
So it must be hard to like have friends if you're moving all around all the time.
That was really my problem when I got here, because I'm like, because we lived with my grandparents and then we moved out here. Well, we came to visit, and then my grandparents' house got really, really toxic, and it's to the point where you couldn't function in that house. Like, and I'm surprised I didn't fail school at that house, but I didn't. I kept A's and B's. And then we moved here. We moved here with my dad. Well, my grandfather. And then, like, when I first got here, my mom's like, if you don't like it, then we can go back. And then we get here, and it's like 3 days, and I'm like, I don't like it. I want to go back. And then the mom's like, we're not going back. Like, something was telling her, like, I don't know what it was, but she was like, we're not going back. Like, she changed her mind. And
Well, what's different? Because it seems like you said, you bounced around a lot, but it seems like you're kind of a centerpiece of a group of girls now that you were helping out, doing those things. So obviously you found at least a small group of friends
I
here
did.
at the high school.
I
So
did.
and then, like
Well,
you
the
said,
friends that I have now, Anna, I've known since 6th grade. Kobe, I've
Mhm.
known since 6th grade. Kinsey, I've known since 7th grade.
and all four of you girls started to have kind of a radical experience with
Yeah.
Jesus about 8 months ago, something like that.
9 months.
Yeah.
9
Tell me a
months.
little bit about what was happening in your life that started to change.
So 8th grade, well, it was really 7th grade, I got into this relationship. And it's just like I had no control. Like I knew that I had control and that I can use it. It's just like I felt like not motivated to. So I just let him do whatever he wanted. I just let him treat me however he wanted. And then I knew that he didn't actually want to be together. And so I finally said something. And then we broke up. And then I got really depressed. I broke my ankle. I started passing out. And we found out about Hashimoto's and stuff. And then it just got bad from there on that subject to where I ended up in ICU.
Mm-hmm.
And then Mike and my mom, because my body was shutting down, like there was nothing that was helping it. And then my mom and Mike got on the phone and prayed together, because my mom's always told me if there's more than one gathered, God will always be there. And then from that point on, I started going up, like getting better, and to where I didn't have to come home on a breathing machine or an IV thingy on my arm. And so about 4 or 5 days after, my mom said, y'all have a prayer session. And I didn't know what that was. I was like, what's that? And first I was like, I didn't want to do that. But I was like, whatever. I'm
It's
not
like
for
people are going to pray for you.
That's what she told me.
You'll
I
be
was like,
fine.
I was like, okay, cool. And then we got prayed over. I had a breakthrough. And then, because I didn't, like, I believed in God, but I felt like I was, like, mad at him.
Mhm.
Like, I felt like I was being punished because of everything. And I didn't really understand him at the time because of the fact that the church didn't really teach me right. And then, so,
Tell me about that breakthrough. Like you said, you had a breakthrough. What was it?
There's this there was this girl in my prayer session named Casey, or I forgot her name. That may be it. And she had said she got something that I didn't believe. Like I went there, and I got it, but I didn't believe.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just started, and I don't know what it was. Like, it's just like that really got to my heart, and I just broke. And then after that prayer session, I felt the lightest that I've ever felt my whole entire life, because I grew up too fast. I always felt like I was like responsible for everything. Like, I had to do everything perfect. Like, it had to be perfect. Mm-hmm. And then I started going to youth. I went to church. I started going to youth. And at first, I was like, cool, you know. I didn't really want to do it, but I was like, you know what?
There's games and snacks.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. And then, like, I got a word one day, and I was like, oh, that's cool. And then I started, like,
What do you mean you got a word?
I forgot. It was in someone's prayer session. I think it was Anna's. I got a word.
What does that feel like?
So it's like a voice inside your head, but it sounds like you, but you know it's not you. Like, you can feel it. And usually
That's a good description of that.
And usually when it's God's voice, it repeats and repeats and repeats until he knows that you are listening, until he knows that
You're
you
like,
know.
I got it.
I was like, all right, I got it. And then I got it, and I was like, that's cool. And then and Mike had said something before the prayer session about words and stuff, and I was like, cool, whatever, what's that? I don't really care. And then I cared. I was just like, okay, like, I'm not gonna get that.
You don't have the context for that.
Yeah, I was like, I'm not gonna get that. And then I got one. I was like, cool. And then that's when I really started paying attention. And then I started talking to Evan again. And like, I was like I loved God. I was into him, you know. But then after me and Evan, like, I knew we were not gonna work. It was just like a whatever thing. And then after that, I've been so down to earth with God. Like, I talk to him all the time. I get so many words, visions. I could feel people. That happened at youth camp. We went to youth camp, and then I asked for a gift, and I said, I want more. Like, I want more. And then he gave me the gift when we were on.
So when you say that, you mean that, like, basically you can tell what somebody's.
I can tell,
You're like, man, you're really struggling with anger. Like, you can feel that.
I can feel them. Yeah, I can feel them spiritually, and I can feel them like how they're feeling, not spiritually. And it's just been boom, boom, boom after since with God. And it's honestly the best experience I've ever had in my life. Prayer sessions are amazing.
What's the difference, do you think, for somebody your age to hear people talk like, oh yeah, when God speaks to me, and you're like, you're expecting a burning bush, you're expecting, something like a voice from heaven. What do you think is the difference when you can actually hear from God?
Well, when you really visualize God speaking to you, you think like you're gonna hear some guy's voice. But really it's just your voice just repeating over and over again until he knows that you know it. And that's the difference. I mean, usually when you hear that, you're just like, oh cool, like he's gonna speak to me, he's gonna have a conversation with me. But it's gonna be a man's voice, and that's what you look for. But really it's just a voice that keeps repeating. He wants to know that that's what he wants you to do.
Well, I always think that that's a pivotal experience for people, because it's like, yeah, there's this God, he's kind of up here somewhere, but it's different when you actually talk to him.
It is. It's really different, because now that when I look at myself now, as I am now, and I look back and I'm like, wow, like that's a different person. God changes you so much to where you don't even know who you were then. And it is so amazing because you're moving even when you don't think you are.
Yeah.
I mean, you can just go up to someone and tell them you look really nice that day. God loves you, and it just changes their whole demeanor. Like last week at youth, I prayed over this guy named Dawson, and I could feel him. So it just changed his whole demeanor. Like he was happier and everything. Like God, he's amazing. He's definitely my idol. I want to be just like him. And it's just been the best experience I've ever had. Best experience.
Well, thanks. Thanks for coming on and sharing your story. We'll see you guys here next time on 7 Minute Stories. If you enjoyed this episode of the 167, make sure you like, subscribe, follow, get notified, leave a 5-star rating and a positive review. Tell all your friends to listen as well. Make sure you go over to newlifegardener.com and check out all that we have to offer as a church, and check out our messages online as well. Thanks for listening.